Hello, everybody. This is Jamal Thomas from the Progressive Soapbox, and this is my wife, Aisha Hollingsworth Thomas, on her way out the door. All right. So I'm going to start the show off on two things. One, Merry Christmas, and two, let's give tepid applause to our Commander-in-Chief. So I am giving Obama applause for doing something he should have did a long time ago. Obama administration allows UN resolution condemning Israeli settlements to pass. So what this means is the United Nations essentially put forth a resolution condemning Israeli settlements. Now, it's the stated position of Obama that he also is against settlements. But up to this point, he hasn't done anything about it. So this time, a vote comes around, and the United States does not use their veto to protect Israel, and it goes through. So, our UN ambassador, Samantha Powers, she says one cannot simultaneously champion expanding Israeli settlements and champion a viable two-state solution that would end the conflict. Netanyahu has publicly boasted of his support for the settler movement, and some of his advisors have disavowed the two-state solution entirely, she said. And she is right. You can't talk both sides of your mouth on this. You can't say, I am in favor of a two-state solution, but I am also in favor of stealing as much land before that solution takes place. Because what it looks like is that you're saying you're for a two-state solution while you grab as much as possible to get to the point where you can turn around and say, well, I mean, can't have a two-state solution. There's not enough land to have a two-state solution. Here's my issue. I like what Obama did, but you're on your way out the door, dude. Why didn't you do this from the day one? This is the Obama that I voted for. But I wanted him to do that before. So, for instance, in 2014, during whatever the war was called, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, they killed, I think it was 2,200 people. And the last report I saw, 80% of which were civilians. The conflict in Gaza in July and August was largely responsible for the dramatic increase in fatalities. It claimed the lives of 2,200 Gazans, of which 1,400 were civilians, 605 militants, and 123 were unverified. Okay, so this is a revision of mine. But 1,492 civilians is shameful. It's still like 60, 70%. It almost looked like you weren't trying to hit military force. You were trying to kill civilians. Now, the sad part is, even after this, Obama continued to give them money, and Obama continued to give them weapons. In 20 years, when we look back, I don't want them to be able to say, well, Obama was against settlements. Well, just because he said it, it doesn't mean anything. You can say whatever you want. Trump says all sorts of stuff. I don't believe it. And look, I'm not comparing the two. I don't think Obama lies anywhere near the degree of Trump. So I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, what you say doesn't really matter in politics. It's what you do. And in this case, he stood by for 8 years and let this stuff take place. And he's making a choice on the way out the door. I don't know if it's to make history look upon him favorably in this case, where they could say, see, Obama, he did something about it, he did something, he let a resolution pass. I don't know why. Maybe this is how he actually feels, whereas beforehand he felt it was politics. I don't know. What I know is the guy I voted for is the guy who would have did this far, far earlier on. When Israel killed all these people, he would have essentially not protected Israel. He would have not continued to give them all that money, and he would have made his displeasure known. He did not do that. He did the opposite of that. And look, he complained and he whined and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, did you do anything tangibly to get across your displeasure with the settlements that you say you do not like? No, you didn't. You complained, you bitched about it. I give you that. You said you didn't like it. I give you that. But did you do anything about it? No, you did not. I've just for a quick aside, I've been to Israel. There was a time I was traveling I was traveling through Egypt, and I went overland from from Egypt, through Eliat, Israel, through Jerusalem, and then through Israel into Jordan. I was trying to catch a flight to Nepal. It is a beautiful country. I mean, it looks like little America, to be honest. And I say that because once you're in Egypt or once you go to Jordan, you notice a great disparity between the countries. Even while I was in Israel, I went through certain parts of Palestine, or what they would consider Palestine, areas like Bethlehem and so forth. As an American, it was easy for me to slide through the country. It was easy. Everybody was polite. Everybody, for the most part, spoke near perfect English. And it was, I remember one guy even said, "We're allies." And, it's a little awkward to hear that, but it gives kind of this perspective of the people who were there in almost a slight militaristic fashion of, yeah, you're my ally. You're from America. At the time, I didn't quite understand that. Being a little bit more into politics, I get it now. When I went through Bethlehem, I met a Belgian Palestinian. She was fierce. And at the time, I think I was trying to talk to her. That aside, look, I'm a guy. But that aside, she worked in the health clinic in that area. And she wanted to show me the area. She essentially paid for my visa. I offered to buy her lunch. And she said, "Well, I'm going back to Palestine. I'm going to Bethlehem." And I asked, I was like, "Well, is it safe for me to go with you?" And she says, "Yeah." And she took it upon herself to show me around. As we were walking through, somebody was screaming out, cursing in English. At the time, I stopped to get something to eat. And the guy was really nice, the guy. She said, she was like, "He's from America." And he says, oh, let me get the best piece of, I think it was corn. He's like, "Let me get the best piece of corn for you." And as my attention is diverted to this, I hear somebody cursing in English, really loud, but I'm not really paying attention to it. Not even paying attention to the fact that it's in English. And I see her go over and attack the guy, scared the shit out of him. And she comes back frustrated, saying, "Yeah, you can't allow that to pass." You can see the difference in the sense of, yeah, there's some people there who don't necessarily like you. There are other people there who think you're just fine. They may not necessarily like what your government does. But you as an American, they make a distinction between the two. They would prefer that you treat them fairly, meaning that when Israel does something that's bad, you hold them accountable in the same way that you hold them accountable when they do something bad. And for the most part, it feels like America is tilted against them, and America is tilted against them. They do not have a military in that fashion. They do not have a navy. They do not have an air force. Israel has all those things, including nuclear weapons, including billions of dollars of support from the United States. On one of my trips to Bethlehem, one of the guys who was a bus driver didn't have his papers. And not having his papers, they stopped the guy, pulled him out of his car. And look, they weren't hurting him, they weren't being aggressive towards him. But I would imagine, as an African American in New York, and they can just stop you and pull you to the side, you don't think I see a commonality between the two. I damn sure see a commonality between the two. As an American, I have free reign through their country. As somebody who actually lived there, they do not. It is an open-air ghetto. Like I said, Israel is a beautiful country, and the people I met were absolutely beautiful. Particularly the women. But what their government right now is doing is horrid. And there is the distinction between government and people. You can criticize their government in the same way that I can criticize my government. It has nothing to do with their religion. And Netanyahu is not the savior of Judaism. Israel is a country like any other country. And the behavior of their government can do things that are bad, just like every other government can do things that are bad. This is an apartheid state. By any other name you want to call it, this is an apartheid state. And, oh, by the way, after hearing that, Israeli is pressing ahead with settlements despite UN resolution. Well, of course they were. Did you think they weren't? Who gives a shit about the UN? There was no teeth in that resolution. It was more so symbolic that the Obama administration later passed. But Israel was pissed. Israel has described as shameful the decision of its long-standing ally, the United States, to abstain from the vote rather than wield its veto. It wasn't shameful when they killed all those civilians, but saying, hey, you shouldn't be able to steal private property from people. That's shameful. That's called Orwellian. That's what that's called. All right. So on to the next story. So Jimmy Dore did a post. He did a blog. And the blog essentially made the argument that the reason we were in Syria was because of a pipeline. That the United States wanted a pipeline So the argument that Jimmy Dore was making.
Why not do it yourself? With
Junior, he wrote an article. We covered some of it that appeared in the Politico. This is also.
So Jimmy Dore, again, I love Jimmy Dore. I don't want you to think I'm picking on Jimmy Dore. I love you, Jimmy. I think he may have this one slightly wrong. And so I read this article myself, and the article was making the point that the reason why we were in Syria was due to a pipeline. So Jimmy does a segment on this.
Echo Watch, which is even of a longer version of that story. Well, politics. What? A pipeline? I've never once heard. And Robert Kennedy says, while the compliant American press parrots the narrative that our military support for the Syrian insurgency is purely humanitarian, many Syrians see the present crisis as just another proxy war over pipelines and geopolitics. What?
All right, so you got to parse it. So in one sense, he may be right. They may see that as being a war or proxy or a proxy war in order for a pipeline. That may be how the Syrians see it. But is it true? Like, is that what it actually is? So, an article came out in Truth Out. The war against the Assad regime is not a pipeline war. So, they make the argument, the reason put forth by the Obama administration for the war against Bashar al-Assad, saving the Syrian people from suffering and death at the hands of Assad, has no credibility with anyone familiar with the record of U.S. interventions and regimes change around the world. And that's true. I mean, they did a report on the CIA, I think it was back in the 60s, and it showed the CIA was trying to overthrow like 7 or 8 different governments. It's amazing. I mean, even Iraq is an overthrow of a government. Even when they're talking about Iran, they're talking about overthrowing a government. Assad, overthrowing a government. Obama had this weird policy of having taken down Assad and ISIS at the exact same time, as if those things were mutually exclusive. You ended up in weird situations where the CIA-backed forces were fighting the army-backed forces. Alright, so in this case, the argument has been made in multiple places over the last few years, but the most widely republished version is an essay by Robert F. Kennedy. That was the one that Jimmy was reading, arguing that the Obama administration began to lay the groundwork for overthrowing Assad regime in 2009 after Syrian President Bashar al-Assad rejected a pipeline proposal by Qatar. The planned pipeline agreed by Qatar and Turkey Kennedy argues, would have linked Qatar's natural gas to European markets through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, Turkey. So it would have deprived Russia of Europe's dependence on natural gas. So they're making a case that this is essentially a proxy war, that the United States wants to put in a pipeline to lessen the dependence of Europe, lessen dependence of gas from Russia. Europe gets its gas from Russia. In order to lessen the dependence of the oil, they're making the case that the Obama administration wants to topple Syria in order to get their pipeline through, which will weaken Russia in the region. Okay? Now, the article makes the case the pipeline war theory is based on a false history and it represents a distraction from the real problem of U.S. policy in the Middle East. The U.S. war state's determination to hold on to military posture and the reason. So it's one of those cases where people are trying to figure out, why the hell is the United States in Syria? Why? There has to be a reason. And in looking for a reason, they locked on to, maybe it's a pipeline. The problem is that the issue wasn't Syria. The issue was Saudi Arabia with the pipeline. I mean, the article makes the case that Saudi Arabia was the problem, not Syria. And that for the most part, the tactics that the United States was using to undermine the Syrian military started under Bush, not Obama. Essentially, it guts the idea that the issue, it even makes the case. It says, long before Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, with the assistance of CIA, began shipping weapons to anti-regime armed groups in Syria in late 2011, the Obama administration could not have been thinking about regime change in Syria to save a Syria-Turkey pipeline for Qatari gas. They all knew perfectly well that there was no longer a possibility of such a Qatar to Turkey pipeline. It's not about a pipeline. I would say read the article. It is fascinating. And I gotta be honest, it makes a good point. It's essentially saying, look, the issue was never Syria. The issue was Saudi Arabia. The pipeline could have never gone through it because Saudi Arabia tends to hold up those type of projects. And they even make the case in one of the papers in that region saying, yes, Saudi Arabia is the problem. They couldn't get it through. They said full well that the Obama administration knew about this, so there would have been no reason for the Obama administration to try to depose Assad purely because of a pipeline. The argument that the papers makes is people are looking for a reason instead of the most obvious reason. The United States is into regime change, that they want to maintain a certain amount of power in the region, and that anything that bucks that is a problem. It's the reason why the United States is trying to take out ISIS and Assad at the same time. It's the reason why Obama wanted to do airstrikes. It's the reason why when Wesley Clark came out and said, yeah, Syria was one of the places they wanted to topple. And Syria was one of the places that CIA was trying to topple back in the 60s. This is not an issue of a pipeline. This is an issue of the United States trying to maintain power in all of these different regions of the world. And that Russia, for the most part, has asserted authority in the region. It's in its backyard. And the United States does not like that. As simple as that. I mean, there's no anything behind the scenes. It's pretty up front. We do not want Russia being a power in that region. We would like to maintain control in that region. And ISIS bucks that. And so does Assad. So the United States is trying to assert itself. It's that simple. Jimmy, I love you. I do. And I read that story in the same way that you read that story originally. I'm pointing this out only in the sense of saying, hey, this stuff, it's fluid. And you got to be skeptical, regardless of where you read the story. I like the analysis of this particular story because I think it's valid. Do I know for certainty? No. Do I think it's right? Yes. This is truthout.com. The war against the Assad regime is not a pipe war. All right? So, in a similar thread, Russia calls U.S. move to better arm Syrian rebels a hostile act. Hostile act. Russia no like it. Moscow last year launched a campaign of airstrikes in Syria to help President Bashar al-Assad and his forces retake territory lost to rebels, some of whom are supported by the United States. So that's essentially the crux of the issue. The United States have decided it wanted to put essentially it's backing a certain proxy group. In fact, I think it's backing two groups. The CIA is backed some and the military is backed some. Russia comes in and says, yeah, we'll help you because we believe that it is in the best interest of the region, since we're in that region, to not have Syria be toppled and taken by ISIS. That is sensible as sensible can be to me. The United States says, we don't like that. No. We're going to support people and we're going to give them back. We're going to give those guys better arms. And I got to be honest, I hate saying this, but I agree with Russia on this front. The United States is putting people in a weird position. The position is, we don't know if we want to topple Assad, but we also don't know if we want ISIS to take over. And it's almost like the United States is saying, well, both of these choices are bad. So we're going to just keep this murkiness of all these people being killed and everything else in perpetuity. In perpetuity for what? Pick a pony, make a choice. These people are living in a hellish environment. And part of the hellish environment is because of what we did in Iraq. We killed like 1 million people. Destabilized that region. And many of those people, many of those soldiers, went here. So we have a dog in this hunt, in the sense that to some degree we help cause the dog to be in that hunt. We are not good actors here in this region. And don't get me wrong, Russia is also not a good actor, but I don't live in Russia. I care about what we do. Does it help to better arm the Syrian rebels? To what end? What is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Do you think, look, do you really think that the guys that the United States are arming are these cuddly guys who are secular? Maybe, but probably not. Why? Well, you're going to undercut the government, and then what? Like, once Bashar al-Assad is gone, which was Obama's stated objective, once he's gone, then what? Who takes his place? I am fully okay with the Syrian government being toppled, but not by ISIS. That is not what I want at all. I do not want them having the levels of power. If that means allowing Assad to be in power, then let Assad be in power. Does that mean that I would love for a revolution within the country to take over? Yes. But not like this. And I do not understand what the United States is trying to accomplish. Because ultimately, it seems like they're trying to play both sides. They're trying to arm certain rebel groups. And look, it's not like these rebel groups, some of these rebel groups have broken ceasefires. I mean, it's not like they have a control over these guys. So, yeah, I don't know what the United States is doing. This is Russia's backyard. We will have great qualms if they were doing something in Mexico. And we were willing to go over a nuclear war over Cuba. So, I loathe to say this, but I agree with the Kremlin on this. This does not get us anywhere. It is a hostile act because for the most part, their soldiers are there. If we're arming people that are going to kill their soldiers, certainly you see there's an issue there. I mean, what other way do you want to call it? It's a proxy war at that point. So, no, I do not like this. I think this is a horrible idea. And the only benefit, actually there are two, to Trump being in office, is that there's a better relationship with Russia. Because I honestly think that Democrats were going to lead us into a nuclear war. All right. And last story.